have a look at the 7th edition browsable HTML, you see it is huge. It is about 13 megabytes or megabytes. There's an introduction, scope, and so on. The strict variant of ECMAScript. Here they explain some definitions. Lag.
And then the picture is like jumping. It's not going 60 frames per second, it's going at like 15.
So here they are explaining some data types. And so on. Here's loops. If we scroll down some more, you see some more details, some algorithms. For instance, the function value of, here are the steps. So first step, let s be this value. Then if type s is symbol, return s. If type is not object, throw a type error exception. Fourth step, if s does not have a symbol data, throw a type error exception. And the fifth step, return the value of s. And here they describe the algorithms for every functionality. Actually, they are not functions because it is pseudocode. You see, ECMAScript is not a programming language. It is just a standard which JavaScript bases on, which also ActionScript bases on. For what can you use ActionScript?
For actions?
ActionScript, not fractions.
I said actions for action. ActionScript for action.
Which actions? ActionScript is used for Flash software.
So if I want to create a Flash game, I need to know ActionScript.
Yes. But also, so ActionScript functionality bases on ECMAScript standard, so the algorithms are here. So JavaScript is not Java. I have to say this because some people still are confused. Java is a programming language that is strict, it is a typed language. JavaScript is not a typed language.
Java is the name of the thing that we was chosen.
Java is an island in Indonesia.
Oh, that too, yeah.
Java does not use JavaScript. Java is a programming language. And JavaScript is another programming language. JavaScript, by the way, was created within 10 days. And so it is not in English. Some people love JavaScript, like I do. Some people hate JavaScript.
I don't know the wonders of JavaScript.
So here, the ones who hate JavaScript create pictures like this. Here you see the big book, JavaScript, the definitive guide, and the small book, JavaScript, the good parts. So they say everything else is bullshit. JavaScript has been made for making the client side of the website dynamic. So it is not much useful anywhere else. Now there is a container for running JavaScript on the server side as well. It's called Node. But the downside on Node is if your application crashes, then the whole node crashes. That means nobody can access it before you restart it. in comparison to usual web servers. So I use JavaScript on client side. For server side, I use PHP, which is preprocessed hypertext. Here are also the links. Here is an example what you can do with JavaScript. There is music as well. Actually, music is made with HTML, audio element, and CSS is also short, but JavaScript is huge here. Let's see how many lines of code. 439. So Brendan Eich was the guy who created the language he called Mocha. Then it was renamed to LiveScript, and after Mark Andreessen created Netscape, Netscape was one of the first web browsers as well. Also, Tim Berners-Lee created the first web browser. It was called Mosaic. But after Netscape was created, then it was renamed to JavaScript because Java was popular, and they just wanted to have something which could become popular as well by renaming it after another popular thing. Later they created a standard and called it ECMAScript. Some programming languages need a compilator. There are many levels. The first level is the machine language. That means here can be used only two numbers, two different characters, which are? Yes. But can you imagine that you create the program only using zeros and ones? Yes, but it would be quick to run because there is nothing in between. The lowest level language is used inside the processor, but the processor types are very different. So there are some Intel processors, some AMD processors, and even those architectures are different. That's why they created the next level, assembly level. On the assembly level, you have to define everything, but you can use human words that will be translated into noughts and ones, into binary. But with help of assembly language, you can also not do things very quickly, because you have to write a lot. You have to define everything, as I said. That's why they created the third level, above assembly level. So the third level programming language is JavaScript, is Java, is PHP, and other things, so that you can reuse the code parts, and the whole code uses human readable words. So how to make that human readable code understandable for a processor? And the translator is called, there are different options for translating. So one option is to compile. It is also called translation. For instance, you use C language. C language needs a compilator. So first you create the code, then you run the compilator. After that you have class files. And you can use class files to run inside a Java virtual machine, which is called Java Runtime Environment. Java Runtime Environment is also our prerequisite for Eclipse, because Eclipse is written in Java. And you cannot run Java without a Java Runtime Environment. That's why Eclipse installer always checks for Java Runtime Environment before it starts installing it. You just cannot run it without it. So what is a Java runtime environment? It is a runtime environment. It's a virtual machine. Lots of different Java virtual machines. For every kind of processor, there is a virtual machine.
Actually, most of the ones that don't allow virtualization, because many processors still don't.
This is different thing what you're talking about. Virtualization means that you run virtual box or
But if you're talking about virtual machines, that would require a processor to allow virtualization.
This is a bit different from VirtualBox and things like that, because it only has to know the class file structure. So you need a different virtual machine for every operating system. But that way Java is a cross-platform language. So you have different virtual machines, but once you have a virtual machine, you can write Java. For JavaScript, you don't need a virtual machine or compiler, because you can use an engine, an interpreter that can translate that language directly, that can interpret some things. For instance, an interpreter is VH. VH is an engine that Chrome runs on. Gecko is another engine that also can interpret JavaScript. On Gecko, Firefox is built on. And there are different engines, different interpreters. So an interpreter is a program. It is like Eclipse. It's like something that is compiled already. So if you run an interpreter, then in order to run that interpreter has to be compiled before. And therefore, any language that interpreter translates does not need any compilation steps anymore. So this is a high-level thing. Then there is the fourth level. The fourth level, they are specific languages for different applications. Like for databases, there is SQL for querying data, for inserting data, for modifying data, for deleting data. And CSS also. CSS is web design specific. So you cannot use it anywhere else or for anything else. And then there is the fifth level. The fifth level is for languages for artificial intelligence. So if you want to create a new human, then you use the fifth level language.
I just want to encrypt itself and everything else. So.
And if you want to program yourself, you also use a very high level language for that. Linux bases on Unix. But we can do a quick search Unix history, and what we find here, so many different graphs. In mid-1960s, MIT, or the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, is a good thing. They make nice things there. operating system called Multics that had many problems. 1969, multiplexed information and computing services, Multics.
No, there was an interesting graph at the top.
And 1970s, Uniplexed information and computing service, Unix with CS. As a pun on Multics, what is pun? Wordplay.
Wordplay, yeah.
Play on words.
Puns.
What is Multics? 1964. So pun is another word for wordplay?
Yeah.
Also, that's what I wanted to know. There is even a web page for Multics internet server. Android is also Unix-like. All Linuxes are Unix-like. Kujutan ette, et sul on hästi pikk kood, hästi palju teksti ühes failis. Kas sulle meeldiks sellist koodi kasutada või mitte? Või sa muudaksid midagi?
Teeks lükamaks ja arusaadavaks.
Kuidas sa teeksid?
Teeks kommentid alla või...
Siis ta läheks veel pikemalt.
Teeks uue keele.
Uue keele lausa?
No jah, midagi, mis on lühem ja arusaadavaks.
Aga oletame, et sul on üks hästi suur fail, mida sa selles muudaksid, et sa ei saa selle uut keelt tuua, sa pead seda keelt kasutama. But what would you do with that file, that huge file?
Maybe translate it into pseudocode.
Translate into what?
Pseudocode.
Pseudocode.
You can translate, you can use this
Pseudocode. You only can use that current language, not pseudocode. What would you do? So this part, the first 6 lines. How would you change this code to be shorter?
shorter.
Just delete lines, but how? So that the code keeps working. I can do more. But,
Maybe add a repeat command after the first string and this will find. Boom!
repeat. But how to repeat? So one way you put it inside. But another way is to create a function do everything, which contains those things, and then you just do everything, do everything, and do everything. I have the right to call the function as I want, and you have the right to understand that function as you want. This is just pseudocode. Here mistakes are acceptable. This way I reuse some parts of the code. I can make the code shorter and I have a better overview of everything then. So there are procedural languages like the previous version where everything is in one line, so commands are just lined up. Inside a procedural language, you can create procedures, you can call them functions, as I do here. But then there are object-oriented languages as well, where you can encapsulate some properties and functions into classes. For instance, you create the class human and you can instantiate human objects of that, all those containing the same property. You don't have to redefine them again and again. You just take them from that class. And then there are functional languages, or actually they call it functional programming. Inside the functional programming, all the functions must be pure. That means no function modifies anything outside the function, so that everything is as clear as possible. But as encapsulation needs more commands, that means running any program that is written object-oriented is a bit slower, but it can be more understandable for programmers. Of course, there are old-school programmers who do not like OP at all. And there is a rule: if your file has more than 2,000 lines, then break it down into smaller files. Otherwise, some editors cannot open it and you lose the overview. Maybe you can create some functions and encapsulate some functionality in object-oriented programming and the functional programming. You all know what a car is, right? I create an example here. So this is an example of object-oriented way of programming. You have a class car with a property fuel, and you have function fill. And the functionality is you just fill the tank. If you add 50 liters, then the fuel will be 50 liters more than it was. So here I use it, car.fill 50. Elm is a programming language that uses functional way. Fun? Elm. Let's see Elm. Elmlang.org. Examples. Hello world. Import HTML exploding text. Main is text. Hello world. Compile. Hello Martin. Compile. Hello Martin. More examples. Unordered list. Here it just uses a library for HTML, and that way it creates HTML parts, so UL with a class attribute and li as sub-elements. I just like to write pure HTML instead of using the language that creates HTML. Here you can see some more examples of Elm as well if you want to try it out at home if you have nothing else to do. You can create your code examples in Elm if you want. That way we also can learn something from Elm as well. So use a language that you like but now you don't know it yet. You have to try out different languages. How do you know that you like them at most if you have never learned Arabic languages or something like that? There are many libraries written for JavaScript and for other languages as well, so that you can just reuse them. But the JavaScript libraries are like higher level languages. For instance, jQuery. If you use jQuery, you have to know jQuery syntax. There is also Prototype, there is Scriptaculous, there is React, and many more. Here is also a little comics. That way the parser does not know that Mr. is not a moron, but any human that reads the code still can understand what is written there. Next picture is taken from Eclipse. It just creates a new browser window with window open. For big Windows quotes there is the hyperreference. And the new window also gets a focus, if I understand it correctly. There are white spaces. If you forget what are the white spaces, you can always check it out in Eclipse. What crash? It is huge. If a huge human enters this room, it takes time. If a small human enters, it goes quickly. Here, window, preferences. General, editors, text editors. I have. I think I have more. So here, configure visibility. And here you see the list spaces, ideographic spaces, tabs, carriage returns, and line feeds. Everything you write inside the source code is a command. So there are decision points, conditions, conditionals. If a condition is true, it takes one path. If it is false, it takes another path. Or you can also use switches. Here you just check for a value. If the value is this, you go this path. If the value is that, you go that path. If the value is something else, you go that path. Then variables. A variable is to computer free cell where one can store values. Data types are important in typed languages. JavaScript is not a typed language, so you can use any types there. If you use a typed language, then if you create a new variable that is of type integer, then you can never set a string value to that variable. It should be integer always. In JavaScript, you can choose values of different data types for the same variable. In every language, we don't have to declare variables. For instance, if we do not declare a variable in JavaScript, then the JavaScript interpreter creates it for us. But it is a good habit to always declare a variable before we use it. Okay, naming convention first. A variable name may begin with a letter or an underscore, but you can use other characters like numbers later in that variable name. Then a variable name must be clear and it should have a meaning, not a cryptographic one. For instance, if you create a new bottle, then the variable name should be bottle, not just B or something like that.
Empty bottle. Related to the process, you have to fill it, and so that would be filled bottle.
If you use functional language, then yes. If you use the off way, you use the same bottle that can be empty or filled. But if you use B, nobody understands what the B is for. But if you use a variable inside a loop, like a for loop, then you can use those cryptographic values like I or J, because then it is clear enough that you only use it for incrementation of the pointer. Then there are languages whose keywords are case sensitive, and there are languages whose keywords are not. For instance, Microsoft Visual Basic, there you can create bottle with lowercase. Later you can write bottle in uppercase, and Microsoft thinks it's the same. But if you are on Linux, they are different. So if you declare a variable in lowercase and later you link to a variable named uppercase, then it just says it's undefined. I cannot understand what you mean by that. I don't know what it meant by the last one. So in object-oriented languages, you can overwrite some properties of some objects or functionalities. There is a class human, and every human has a property like, how do you describe a human?
Describe a human, it goes to the genetic level, and, no one really does it.
Abstraction. What is this? Teacher 1, activity 1, 2, 32. Ah, this is object diagram. So here you see that people and teacher have same properties, name and password. So we can generalize. We can say that pupil expand or extends teacher. And then we delete those here. Password. Integer. Also, teacher has password and people extends teacher. For people there is also a property password, but of different type. So this is overwriting. Overwriting a property. If you do not overwrite, then people's password must be a string as well. But now we overwrite, say it to be integer. So before you use a variable, you have to assign a value to it, and you always assign from right to left. And every variable has a scope. Usually a variable lives inside a block, and outside the block it's not visible in some languages. If a variable is declared inside a function, then outside that function that variable is not visible. This is
Max, come here. I think you would like to speak to
How was her liblikas in English? Mock?
Mock, yeah. M-O-T-H. H.
It's about debugging. First actual case of bug being found. First task. You are 3 people here. Every one of you think of a number from 1 to 10 and don't say it out loud. Ready? And now, the circular way, you start guessing the number that is told of the other people, and if the number is not correct, that other people has to say whether the number is bigger or smaller. How do you describe the guessing method you used? Intuition. Everybody used an intuitive method, right? And call it algorithms. So there are numbers. So there are numbers from 1 to 10. Of course, you can guess that the number is 7. But what if there are thousands of numbers and you just use an intuitive method? Then it would take forever. Some captions here as well. Numbers. Binary search means that we divide the amount by 2. So let's say this is start and this is end, and the average is 10 plus 1 divided by 2 is 6. Middle. We find the number 6. 6 is bigger than 1. That means it's less. So we change now. End is here and start is here. So 1 plus 5 is 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 is not the number that Vlad has. So we have taken 2 steps already. Now end is here, start is here. 1 plus 2 divided by 2 is 2. So this is middle as well. 2 is still bigger than 1. We have taken 3 steps. So now, and we have found. It took 4 steps to find Vlad's number using binary search. What about finding Max's number? We say 2 steps. Okay, let's see whether it's correct. First one is 6. It is bigger, so that means start is here, end is here. 7 plus 10 is 17 divided by 2 is 9, but it is not 9. 2 steps already. We create here end and start. 7 plus 8 divided by 2 is 8. This is middle. Already 3 steps and not found. 7 is less than 8. Now we know that middle is here and also 4 steps. What about finding Martin's number? Actually we did it already because Martin's number is here, so that means 3 steps. How can we conclude that? If we know that the number we search is somewhere at the beginning, then we can use linear search. It takes less steps. But anywhere, we saw here that at most it took 4 steps. If we don't know where the number is, like for Martin and Max's number, it's far away, it doesn't matter whether the number is at the beginning or somewhere else, it still took 4 steps. And for finding Martin's number, it took even only 3 steps instead of 8 in linear search.